turn those smiles upside down because we are about to get a little grim. Let's get started. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Thumb Together. My name is Andrew Fantasia, and today we're going to be talking about Gretel and Hansel together. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well. The classic fairy tale about two kids with deadbeat parents who wander off into the woods and get snatched up by what's essentially a cannibalistic pedophile has finally been brought to the big screen in a mature way. And what are we looking at here? We're looking at a movie that I think falls short of greatness, but still has a lot to offer. Everybody knows how big a fan I am of Robert Eggers' The Witch, taking a simple, universal folktale, filming it in a very cold, dark, dreary, extraordinarily realistic way, portraying what it would have been like to have to deal with a creepy witch of the wood in 1600s New England. Gretel and Hansel takes that same idea of this timeless fairy tale that we all know and love, and films it in a dark, creepy, extraordinarily realistic way, and tries to portray what it would have actually been like to have been two children snatched up by a witch of the wood in whatever year this is supposed to be. And I think, for the most part, it gets that job done. But there's just something about I don't know if it's the editing or just the overall pacing of the film that makes it fall short for me in terms of living up to the kind of fairy tale standard that The Witch set. And I wasn't going into this trying to compare it to The Witch. I just came out of it comparing it to The Witch because in a lot of aspects it was very similar, except the parts where I think it mattered most. First of all, Gretel and Hansel's got a great big obnoxious voiceover narration by Gretel, and I'm just not a fan of those. I don't like voiceover narrations. I think they're cheesy when movies do it. I think they're cheesy when TV shows do it. I think they're really cheesy when comics do it. It's just, get your narrations away from me, man. And the ones in this one are some of the worst ones you'll hear, because Gretel is doing all these narrations, and the girl who plays Gretel is doing a good job. It's the girl from It who plays young Beverly. She's nothing to sneeze at. She's a fine actress. But those voiceovers sound like they just recorded her reading a sentence for the very first time, didn't give her a chance to do a second take, and said, okay, cut, lock it in. We got what we needed. Thanks, Gretel. I couldn't help but wonder how much better and more atmospheric this movie could have been without stopping every 10 minutes or so you can hear, I was frightened and I didn't know what I should do next, but I had to stand by my brother and I had to believe in myself. I think we could have all been fine without hearing those throughout the film. Of course, the atmosphere, lovely, wonderful. Seeing just the deep, dark wood and all the creepy dangers that could exist therein, that to me is what I want to see in fairy tale movies. I want to see just how creepy those woods are. Because let me give you a history/geography lesson, kids. In the country of Germany, there exists a place called the Black Forest. This is real. This isn't from the movie. In real life, you can go to Germany and visit the Black Forest. Now, as you know, human beings, we're awesome, but we kind of suck sometimes as we have developed and populated the earth. The Black Forest has gotten smaller and smaller because we keep building more and more city space. But picture this. It's the 1200s or the 1500s, whatever. It's way back in the day. You live in a tiny Bavarian village somewhere in the German countryside. Back then, the Black Forest was gargantuan, which meant no matter what village you lived in, you could probably stand on the highest peak or the highest hill and look in any direction and see the Black Forest. If you grew up in one of these villages, as a child, you grew up hearing tales and nursery rhymes from your parents about the forest. Why? Because it was a real thing. They didn't want their kids to run off, wander into the deep dark wood, and get hurt or attacked by an animal or something. The parents were afraid, so what happens? They made up all these fairy tales. Little Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel, Sleeping Beauty, Friday the 13th Part 6, that involve scary things happening to children who wander into the woods so that their children would not leave the village and wander into the woods. It was as simple as that. It was their equivalent of telling your kid, there's a boogeyman in the basement, so don't go down the basement stairs. The Brothers Grimm perfected and streamlined those tales, but the common denominator of the deep, dark, mysterious woods never went anywhere. It's still there. It's still apparent in all these stories. In Hansel and Gretel, arguably the most. So as a fan of those fairy tales and as a fan of the history of where and when those fairy tales came from, I love the idea of seeing that deep, dark wood that became this mythical other that was just always looming on the horizon from whatever village you lived in. This just dark swath of green shadow that you warned your kids to stay away from. I love the idea that it becomes this monstrous entity and that it can be filmed in such an ominous way in things like Gretel and Hansel and in things like The Witch. So for atmosphere alone, I give Gretel and Hansel full marks because that forest looks dope, it's dreary, it's scary, it's covered in shade. You'd never see sunlight pouring through those trees. And that witch hut, I don't know, something about the triangular shape of that peak, it just feels like it's got evil devil cult written all over it. I am staying the hell away from any house shaped like that. Finally, there's the witch herself, and I think they did something really interesting here. They didn't go the obvious route. They did visually. She has a broomstick, sort of, and she even has the pointed hat. But they didn't go the obvious route with the character of the witch. She is pretty much straightforward with Gretel. With Hansel, it's straight out of the fairy tale, guys. She's feeding him, and she's plumping him up, and then she's like, yeah, go play now, and rub some hot garlic butter over yourself while you play, why don't you? With Hansel, she's being a straight-up witch. With Gretel, she talks to Gretel like an equal, like an adult. Minor spoilers for the movie here. The witch wants to train Gretel to be a witch herself. What Gretel does with that information, I'll leave up for you to discover by watching the film. But I thought that these conversations Gretel had with the witch were so interesting because the witch felt like a woman who has been at this for a long time. She's been doing what she's doing for quite a while. And frankly, she just wants to bugger off to St. Lucia and kick up her heels and drink a coconut. She's done. She has had enough. She is a world-weary, jaded witch. And that comes across, that humanity of the witch comes across when she is talking to Gretel. That's why I find her so fascinating in those moments when she's not cackling and casting spells or whatever. She's just like, look, honey, I can do some messed up shit and you can do it too. So just learn from me so I can get the hell out of here already. That's a really neat twist on the character. I thought that was great. I wanted to explore that even more if possible. But this is a short movie, even though it doesn't feel like it. The pacing kind of draws it out. It's a very quick movie. It's here and it's done, as most horrors tend to be. So you don't get to spend as much time with the witch as you want, but you do get to spend as much time with the witch as you need, and that's important. So even though there's some clumsiness to it, there's some clunkiness to it, it didn't quite fire on all cylinders. It was firing on most cylinders, and I think Gretel and Hansel is a great, as the poster claims right here up top, grim fairy tale. It takes you right into the heart of those black woods in Germany and really makes you feel the emptiness, the eeriness of that fabled deep, dark wood. But that has been Gretel and Hansel. That has been Thumb Together. I've been Andrew Fantasia, and you have been delightful as always. I'll see you all here next time. Until then, adios.